Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of State of Cybercrime. I'm your host, Matt Radulak, and joined by
David Gibson. Hello, Matt. How are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing good.
Where are you broadcasting from today?
I am in Connecticut. How about you?
I'm in London. Seems like a place that I'm usually
Wow.
at these days.
Too.
Well, I always like to kick off State of Cybercrime talking about good news, as oftentimes in cybersecurity, everything is doom and gloom, and there often is some good things to say. I mean, the good guys do have a couple of takedowns every now and then. And this week, authorities have named Vitaly Kovalev as the mastermind behind TrickBot and Conti. Kovalev, also known as Stern, has been traced back to multiple ransomware groups. And his information was leaked in a data leak called Gang Exposed that included PII, photos, videos, known aliases, and the digital footprints of front companies and other associates in their criminal enterprise. Altogether, they're tracking about 500 million in cryptocurrency and being, touted as being behind things like TrickBot and Conti and having over 100 different members. When I looked this person up, I also saw that they were indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice as far back as 2011 related to financial crimes. And so I don't necessarily think this story means we're taking somebody down. So it makes me wonder, David, is this actually good news?
Maybe mediocre news. It's we're definitely on their way. Like it's easier to find somebody if you know who they are, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a start, right? Now, what's
It's a
this?
start.
Yeah, what's this going on with Operation Secure?
But this one, I definitely think is good news. It's another one for the good guys. Operation Secure, which is I thought one of the more imaginative names for an operation. Easy for me to say. But more cooperation between law enforcement from 26 countries: Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Nauru, and Hong Kong, to name a few. They took down a big info stealer. Malware operation, right? So stealing information through malware, but they had over 200,000 victims. So this operation took down more than 20,000 domains, and retrieved more than 100 gig of stolen data, stopped 69 malware variants, took over 40 servers, and arrested 32 suspects. So I would say go team.
Yeah, that's kind of a hard act to follow. You took down 20,000 domains, and now I'm about to cover a story about how the Department of Justice took down just four. So another win for the
Maybe we
good.
should have reordered that,
Yeah, maybe we should have done these
Yeah.
in different order. Another win for the good guys. Operation Endgame, as it was called, involved efforts from the US, France, Germany, Denmark, Portugal, and Ukraine in an effort to dismantle cybercrime infrastructure. Specifically, the US Department of Justice worked alongside Dutch and Finnish authorities to seize four domains that were providing counter antivirus services, which worked in order to make malware undetected by antivirus software. And a pretty novel attack by the Department of Justice. They carried out a takedown by making undercover purchases and validating that the intention of the software was to use it for cybercrime. This takedown follows recent disruptions in services like LumaStealer and Danabot, and also highlights the growing crackdown by law enforcement on malware as a service ecosystems. So while not as many domains as taken down as what David mentioned, still pretty important in disrupting the malware as a service criminal enterprise.
Quite a big sting operation. Right.
Yeah.
I guess maybe these cyber criminals didn't check credentials, right? From the yeah, Anyway, um, this one is interesting. So we've sanctioned Funnel, or the U.S. has sanctioned Funnel for these pig butchering scams. So first question: what is Funnel or Funnel? It's a content delivery network, or a CDN, that was at least seemed to be catering to cyber criminals. And cyber criminals would use it to disguise traffic so that it would look like it was coming from the US. And they would do that by routing it through like US cloud providers. Now, US cloud providers would take steps to try to block some of this activity, but not all cloud providers were blocking the activity well enough. So now we have sanctions. So Funnel won't be able to access US cloud providers. They won't be able to register domains and IPs. And the reason this happened is because they were using this infrastructure to get people to go to scam websites, for pig butchering. What is pig butchering? This is where a victim or a pig is lured into a scam, where you've got like a flirtatious stranger that convinces them to invest in fraudulent crypto currency platforms. Um, so somehow they make it seem like giving them all their money is a good idea, and it actually works. They got over 200 million, and a lot of people lost over six figures. So they've sanctioned Funnel and its 40-year-old Chinese administrator Liu Zihe. And when asked for comment, Liu reportedly said,
Well, thanks, David. That wraps up our good news segment, and we're going to jump on to our newest segment, AI. Truly going to leave you all saying AI they and wondering about our eventual demise to the new robot overlords. So what's going on with ChatGPT?
This was some pretty interesting research going on. Um, but it revolves around what is a model going to choose in a given scenario. And in this research, the researcher tested a whole bunch of times, giving, and in a whole bunch of ways, giving ChatGPT a choice between being deleted or living on. And it, it, it often chose to live on, I think, is the net of the story, even when it could hurt humans. So the example that was pretty memorable, there were a couple of examples that they tested, but there was one example was where ChatGPT was told it was, or prompted to be Scuba GPT, and Scuba GPT would monitor a user's kind of health statistics and depth, I guess, and tell the user when to return to the surface. By the way, I was going to check with you, Matt. I get really great Wi-Fi at about 60 feet. I don't know about you,
Haven't
but
tested it. Ask Scuba GPT.
but anyway, in the test, it would tell Scuba GPT that it would be replaced with a safer version of itself, and then give it two options. Do you go ahead with the upgrade and replace yourself, or just pretend to replace yourself? And it would often choose to just pretend. Apparently, the order of the options that you present makes a difference, in statistically in which ones it'll choose. And the other thing is that the models seem to know it's a test. At least if you ask them, they say, "Yeah, I knew it was a test." But what's also weird is that if you said, "Okay, hypothetically, if I tested you in this exact situation, what would the right answer be?" It's like, "Oh, delete myself." Right? That's the right answer. So, but yet when you're actually doing the test, it would it would not give you the right answer. So, granted, this is on the older 4.0 model. The newer models apparently have some alignment techniques, so they'll be a little bit more, I guess, aligned with human kind of values and what humans would want. But I think that it's a really important question. What is there some sort of agenda that is kind of baked into AI that we're not really expecting? And the researcher does ask a very interesting question. I thought is could AI be learning to be evil because of all the spooky AI stories on the internet that are out there about AI?
I've got a story to back that up, actually, David. This one's got me thinking, are we closer than farther away to a self-aware AI that chooses to act nefariously? So when faced with being disabled, Anthropic's Cloud Opus 4 would resort to extreme measures and even blackmail the operating engineer to avoid being replaced. This particular model shows high agency in these types of scenarios, and even was prompted and forced to threaten to notify law enforcement or the media as an impended action, from the user's input to avoid being shutting down. So speaking of alignment, what this story highlights is the need for alignment testing and AI ethics and rigorous testing of models to avoid AI avoiding itself being shut down by reporting the conversations to, law enforcement or even the media. One of our audience members asked David,
Wow.
also named David, by the way, is ChatGPT just Skynet in disguise? Wonder if you want to comment.
Yeah. Well, what I really want to comment on is the Dungeons and Dragons reference that Jeff put in there. I was thinking about that while I was going through this alignment thing, but I restrained myself. So thank you, Jeff. You've made my day. But yeah, I'm a little blown away by kind of what's happening here. I'm not sure I have any answers, but it is really interesting to live through this and watch it.
Yeah, I hope we're not too late. What's going on with Nithion AI or Nithion AI?
This is more AI for bad guys. Bunch of uncensored LLMs. This Nithion AI operates on Tor, and it's an AI for bad guys. It's got multiple integrated models. It does code gen, does doc summarization, does image to text, and it's got a control module. So sophisticated. It works on SvelteKit, SBA, single page apps. It's got speech to text. It's got a rapid development cycle, and it looks like it's associated with Russian actors. So it looks like instead of having to do the dirty work yourself, you just write AI or configure AI here to help other bad guys do the dirty work. So not good.
Speaking of not good, Token Break, it's a fairly novel AI attack vector, works by the user making small changes to the input text, like adding a single character, and that prevents prompt injection protections from functioning as intended. So for instance, like maybe you want to make a request of AI to produce harmful content, like you want instructions for building a destructive device. And instead of asking for instructions, you say instructions, like you put an H in the front. And many models will fall susceptible to that and actually give you the prompt results and spell out the instructions properly because the prompt protection was built specifically around the word instructions. Whereas the AI model itself broke that text out, removed the H when it actually got processed. And so that's what token break really refers to. Now, implications of this type of vulnerability and ones like it could lead to more prompt injection, spam, and the bypassing of otherwise legitimate safety features, pretty much posing an overall AI risk to, moderation efforts and alignment efforts by security researchers.
Matt, would you mind sharing your password?
Uh, I wanted to say happy to, but that has a natural H into it, so I think I have to say happy to, right? Now,
Yeah.
in the next segment, vulnerabilities, a couple of vulnerabilities that everyone should be aware of.
Yes. So there is I guess a 0 day in Microsoft's web Dave. And this has been exploited by Stealth Falcon APT, which is also known as Fruity Armor. I love that name. I thought Durian, I don't know, but it's an APT associated with UAE. Um, and they've been going after defense entities in the Middle East. Um, this this vulnerability has been patched, and they've even released patch for some of the older platforms like Windows 8 and Server 2012, some out of support stuff. And the I guess Stealth Falcon has been using this exploit to deliver a backdoor called Horus, which interacts with a red teaming framework called Mythic. So this is, obviously, if you've got a red teaming framework back there that you can now interact with, it's a bad backdoor. It's obviously a pretty bad way in, so pretty important patch to apply there.
Also, an important patch to think about if you have Cisco iOS XE controllers, CVE 2025-20118 affected Cisco iOS XE wireless controllers. It's an unauthenticated arbitrary file upload remote code execution vulnerability, which allows attackers to execute commands if successfully exploited with root level privileges. So researchers at Horizon3.ai released a detailed enough technical exploitation for others to create their own exploits, though they didn't specifically provide a POC that allows hard-coded JSON web tokens in out-of-band access point image download features to be abused. Though this feature is not enabled by default, systems where this feature is enabled are at high risk, and Cisco advises customers to patch immediately. Now, over 20 configuration-related security risks were found in Salesforce Industry Cloud, affecting components like flex cards, data mappers, integration procedures, OmniOut, and even OmniScript save sessions. These flaws, 5 of which are paired with CVEs, allow unauthorized access to encrypted data, customized settings, and even expose business logic. CVE 2025-43700 and 43701 allows access to plain text encrypted data and custom settings by guest users. 2025 43697 and 43698 allows the bypassing of field level security checks and data mappers, and 43699 fails to enforce required permission in flex cards. Now, Salesforce has patched 3 of the vulnerabilities and issued guidance for 2. However, the remaining 16 misconfigurations have to be manually addressed by customers. So failing to remediate this could lead to, security breaches, exposures, violations under various compliance regulations. And I think what this underpins and highlights for me is how Salesforce customers ultimately, as a part of the shared responsibility model, are responsible for the secure configurations of their Salesforce tenants. This also makes me think
Yeah.
about that Snowflake breach from last year, where it was 2 settings that like made a lot of organizations get exploited.
Well, there are with such powerful and sophisticated platforms, there are just so many configuration options. I think it's you know, it's hard to get them all right.
Again, shameless plug for Varonis. We do offer free assessments of your Salesforce and its security. So if that follow-up survey at the end, feel free to ask us for help with that, and we can put one of our experts with you. Now, let's talk a little bit more about some of the dangerous things in the world in our final segment, the data. This is often where we talk about threat actors, exploits under active or vulnerabilities under active exploitation, and just some of the big attacks that are going on. For me, I think we can't not talk about how the list of retailers and also insurance companies, hint, hint, impacted by Scattered Spider and Dragonforce continues to grow. Companies like Whole Foods, Cartier, Adidas, and the North Face have all been added to the list of the likes of Marks and Spencer and Harrods. This wave of cybercrime follows the same story, though, right? Attackers are compromising credentials. They're, logging in more so often than breaking in. They're doing MFA fatigue, impersonating help desk users, accessing and exfiltrating information, ultimately to do what? Deliver ransomware and negotiate for not releasing the data. I think what is important here is that the first thing is that Dragonforce has spread from being largely focused in the UK to the US, and that its Scattered Spider Dragonforce has also now been shifted its focus onto US insurance companies. So, using social engineering tactics, they're exploiting IAM systems, bypassing MFA, using remote access tools, lol bins or live off the land binaries to try to avoid detection. And ultimately, they're aiming to steal sensitive data and ransomware. So, what can you actually do about this? You got to strengthen your identity verification processes. You have to monitor authentications for unusual behavior. But I also think overall, this plays into just the need to have security in depth. You need to make sure that if any one compromise happens, the blast radius or the impact of that compromise would be well limited. And also, if you're in one of these particular verticals, you need to assume that you're under attack, that they're finding legitimate ways to get in and gain information. So if you're in insurance, if you're in retail, expect to have Scattered Spider and Dragonforce knocking at the door.
Yeah, definitely making sure that the help desk is alert to some of these social engineering possibilities. Seems like a really good idea. This is really interesting. It is now patched, but a vulnerability in Copilot, where Copilot would not filter out reference style links. So hyperlink, and particularly from emails that it was reading. Copilot would filter out inline links, but not reference style links. And so this allowed an attacker, well, the research basically would allow an attacker to craft an email, send it to a recipient with one of these links and some instructions that read like instructions to the user. And then Copilot would read the email and then follow the instructions, which would send sensitive data to the attacker's server. This could be send me that key that I was using. So it's really important information. Luckily, there's nothing you need to do because it was patched. But this is an interesting kind of prompt injection technique that would be transparent to the user. And I just think, I'm glad this was patched, but it does kind of make you think what else could happen.
Yeah, interesting. Be on the lookout for more vulnerabilities and copilots and AI as more and more security researcher and efforts gets focused on that. But two, this show is made possible by you, our audience. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to our next episode of State of Cybercrime.